Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy channel. My name is Jed, and we are in the book that bangs the hardest and the most consistently. Banger of a book. Bang so hard your great-grandchildren will get CTE. Ha 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 ha. We have fun. So, yesterday we looked at, we asked the question, what's the method? How do we know the self? If that's our goal, if we realize we are aware of our own existence, then surely a question that will come to someone who's rational is, what am I? What am I? And what am I supposed to be doing here? And what are the abilities that I have to do that? What am I requires you to know the self. And we've also been reading in the book. Why am I offline on my OBS? Refresh that. We've also been reading in the book that all hell breaks loose. Disasters happen when we don't know the self, because we will be carrying a false image of the self that we identify with, causing our problems in each moment and in our reincarnations between lifetimes. So that first question, well, what am I? Is a big one. What am I supposed to be doing here? Is actually the same question. Know the self. Know the self. We could actually say, well, know self and reality you find yourself in. And again, not doing that means we are carrying a false image of self, just mentioned, and a false belief about reality. That's the cause of our interpretations, our projections of what's not there onto the moment, and our blind spots and our inability to see and relate to what is there. So leaving out what is and adding what isn't. That's how we project our problems onto the world, and that's how we are blocked from our goals. So, asking that question, what am I, is super important. Those who don't, they are stuck in their, what we call fate. They're stuck to a repeated cycle of problems because they are carrying a pathologos that blocks them from the logos. And the goal? To know the self and know reality. And the third question we asked, well, if that's what we are as the main character in this video game we call life, if that's what we are, and if that's our goal, what buttons do we press? What abilities do we have? And we talked about how there are two fundamental abilities that we have that distinguish us from cabbages and caterpillars. Our ability for self-reflection, called ousia, and our ability to put language on that self-reflection. Ousia and logos. Now, language, the reason we need the word logos and not just language is because logos also means reason. It also means knowability. It isn't just understandable, it's also knowable. So the idea of knowing self and reality includes both experiencing it, knowing it all at once as a whole, and understanding it, seeing its parts and whole. Ousia and logos, states of mind and understanding. So that's our A button and B button. Now when we press the A button, what do? We give birth to questions. And the questions are from the text. So we can give birth to questions that are not just reflections of our own personal pathologos, beliefs and opinions. We read texts that reflect the logos from masters of the logos, Pierre Grimes, Socrates, Parmenides, Diotima, and of course, to a lesser extent, Plato, the head teachers of the academy after Socrates, Plato, Dionysius, Proclus, but these bods. So we give birth to questions from the text, and we look for the language that allows us to answer those questions, because we recognize there is a different language to different kinds of things. There is a language that allows you to get your human problems that 100% of humans have access to, but we have to learn a different kind of a language, add in a few keywords, and understand a certain structure that we apply those keywords to for us to participate in philosophy or reaching your goal, knowing reality. But also that extra goal, so you could say save the princess, but also defeat King Koopa. There is also a slightly different language applied to knowing the self, because they are two different dimensions, meaning they have certain words but different relationships between the words. To distinguish the different levels, they are incommensurate is the fancy word. They are different kinds of things, like being underwater and being above the surface of the water. So there's a language we make use of to get our problems and participate in beliefs and image thinking, shapes and colors, to get our prejudices and ignorances. Then the language that we need to awaken our mind to know the mind. And there's a language needed to go through that divine luminosity of knowing the object of knowledge, mind, knowing itself, turning about. There's your ousia. Ousia as an experience completely is knowledge, the perfect knowledge. We want to go through that experience to know the self. So, 3 levels of questions and 3 levels of language. You will have a question about your false beliefs about self and reality that you don't even know you're carrying because you didn't put language on it when you were young. They are unsuspected false beliefs because you didn't put words on them. And as the oracle says,
the problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
As it was a non-rational position, well, understandable, there was a kind of rationality behind it, but because we didn't put words on it, we have to develop a question and surface our pathologos language, the sort of language that's specific to us, our idiosyncratic language, our unique language. Like you might call yourself a dum-dum head, but that's not something that everyone calls themselves. You might say things like, women suck. Not everyone says that, but the people in your family might. Or white power. That's an interesting thing some people say in certain families. Or Jesus is king, or Mormon, whoever the Mormons believe in, Mormon Xenu is king, or Harry Potter is the devil. So we want to have a question about our unsuspected false images and beliefs of self and reality. That's the cause of our problems, because we naturally want to be happy. We don't want to be stuck in our problems. We all want to be free of our problems. We don't want to suffer. So that's giving birth to a question about our beliefs and surfacing our pathologos language. But also, you won't be able to surface that pathologos language unless you're at the same time looking for the truth about self and reality. So that's why we read the texts, to give birth to questions about reality and to learn its language. There's our second level of language. And third, to give birth to questions about self and to learn its language. So those are our 3 levels. Waiting for the board to load. I'll give it a sec. So that's what we looked at last time. Our method, what we have to make use of, our A button and B button. Questions about self reality or our problems, which is the same, false beliefs about self and reality, cosplaying and Noah. And to learn, that's our A button, and our B button, to learn the language and the structure of language. Of course, that's why it's logos, it's not just language. It's how to structure your use of language about those 3 things too. Our pathologos, the logos of reality, and the logos, the kind of language that you need to wonder about and prepare for the experience and understanding of self. So lots of duads. Ousia and logos. Questions and language. Preparing us for the direct experience and the understanding, which is seeing it as a whole and through its parts. 2 things. Now, here it is on a picture. A physical world where we get belief-based shallow ousia and pathologos, logos. We could even add the word pathologos into that map down the bottom. I forgot to test. It works. Oops, that won't fit, will it? So take this time to enjoy the beautiful map. Logos. Our pathologos. So we're naturally curious about their question. We want to know what reality is. Everyone does. And we want to know what ourselves are. Only most people give up on asking those simple basic questions. They're just rational questions. Like, it's the most rational thing you can ask. What am I? What is reality? What's my goal here? And what do I do to reach that goal? And of course, the other questions that come along with that is, and then what happens after I die? And where was I before I was born? So we can add those 2 in the mix. And we're doing that because we are looking at the idea of reincarnation. So each instant, we have the opportunity to incarnate into the dimension of mind, or the dimension of self, or the physical world and our problems. So too, in our reincarnation between life, we read last time that when we die, everyone has an experience of, has an experience of divine luminosity here. And depending on the learning and nurture, again, 2 things. Learning, there's your understanding. Nurture, there's making it your state of being. No, state of mind and thinking. So there's 2 things, ousia and logos. Depending on your learning and nurture, you will have a subsequent depth or shallowness of that divine luminosity, which will be the cause of your type of character, your intelligence, your ability, and also the your lack of having completely removed your false identification with self causes you to reincarnate into a kind of time and family where you'll pick up a similar false belief about yourself, causing your problems, because that's what you're here to purify. Those who have that experience of divine luminosity sometimes recognize, this is from the text again, that it was only their fear of losing themselves that prevented their ability to endure and experience that luminosity in depth. In other words, their false attachment to a false idea of themselves. So that's our method To learn the language and give birth to questions and carry those questions, because we looked at the idea that to carry a question is to be on a quest. So you concentrate on the question, to keep that question and keep concentrating on it and never dropping it, transforms concentration into meditation. And of course, if you sustain that, it's the same continuum. You can join with the object. So hopefully you've been contemplating reality yourself. Those are the two kinds of usiyas that you can join with. Contemplation. So those are the three stages. Lesser, greater, and ultimate, which is the triad of self-logos terms. And we've also got a lesser, greater, and ultimate here to point to the three dimensions of reality. Well, there might be more, but three primary overarching dimensions. So, carry a question and learn the language and structure of language. Now, what makes use of questions and language? The dialectic. So there's our dialectic here. So that first question that we would ask, what am I, is answered, you answer it by making use of the dialectic applied to self. And what's reality? Same thing. The use of the dialectic applied to the aspects or eidos of the brilliant light of being. So we need the word eidos, because whole, part, same, other, lesser, greater, ultimate, beauty, justice, all of these things are all aspects of the same luminosity of mind. So we call it the paradigm. The study of that is metaphysics. The using analogies or allegories to personify those principles, that's theology. So philosophy, metaphysics, and theology are all the same thing. The study of the aspects of mind or being over here. Which means our ultimate goal to know the self is beyond even that. So we make use of the dialectic to make use of those two A and B buttons. There it is on the board. But as we said, there seems to be three different things. At least two different things. The removing of our false beliefs about self and reality, and the learning of those two logos and carrying these two kinds of questions to experience it. So one is reaching the truth, one is removing the false. But we've also been reading that's not enough, because you won't get the guidance you need to help in those two activities unless you're also doing dream analysis. Unpacking the logos, there's a certain logos and there's a certain usiya or knowingness that also applies to your dreams. Or the intelligence, of the dream maker. But we also read there's one more principle that we need to incorporate. The principle of, or the law of truth. Those who have experienced the same, or those who know the same, say the same about the same. So another reason to experience it, knowing, usiya, and talk about it, logos. It's always usiya and logos. So we need to bring those four principles together. But thankfully, all four of those things utilize the same dialectic. So what's the skill that we learned? So to answer the question, how do we know the self and reality? What's our goal? And what are the abilities we have? All three of those things are answered with the same question. How do you know self and reality? Use the dialectic. What's our goal? To master the art of dialectic. And what's our abilities? Usiya and logos, which we use through the dialectic. So that's the dialectic on the board. There are four categories, and of course you can apply it to questions about what is. Does beauty exist as an eidos, an aspect of mind? Or what if it doesn't? What if it's just an opinion? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that kind of stuff. So you explore what kind of universe, if it is, talk about the thing itself, definition, how it functions self to others, how that functioning, being affected by that functioning, how you can then affect others, division. And then from that, synthesize that into a key idea that you can take back to the start, other back to self, conclusion. You can do that for if beauty does exist or doesn't exist. Hang on a second. Didn't we say there are 4 activities that we have to somehow bring together into one? Well, it's the same dialectic. Here we have a dialectic on the dialectic. We have here a dialectic. Make it a bit bigger. That's what she said.
You have the brain of a child if you think that.
Oh my goodness. Dialectic.
I'm a real living being.
Dialectic on the dialectic. So, to define the thing, you're talking about what it's, you can apply it to the truth. So the dialectic applied to know the truth of reality and self is philosophy. Now we did say that that higher question is beyond philosophy, but I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Socrates calls it philophrenesis, the upgrade, or the... If philosophy is the penultimate, the ultimate is philophrenesis. But phrenesis is a tricky word, so we might just call that philosophy max. Or Platonic philosophy and the higher one, Socratic. Either way, philosophy is the key word we're using, which is the dialectic applied to what's true. But we also said we need to be doing that to surface our blocks, our pathologos language, and our false certainty that blocks. So the pathologos functions as a block because the pathologos language, like the inner critic that says you suck, yourself is stupid, blocks the logos, because the logos actually is saying you are ultimate. You're beyond any idea of a god. Even greater. So can you see how that I suck, I can't understand, I can't know bullshit self-talk that puts you down not only becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but blocks the actual self-logos. But also it blocks your ousia, because if ousia is question, we make use of ousia through questions, openness, curiosity, wonder, joy.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
Childlike wonder, dude.
Do a poggers.
That allows us to do a poggers.
Dead-eyed, and I don't use this kind of terminology lightly, dimwits.
Stops us from being a dead-eyed dimwit. Thank you, soundboard. That's our questioning. But certainty, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The most ignorant and brainwashed are most certain. It's the stupidest religious people who are the ones who feel like they need to shout at people in the street that Jesus loves them or Jesus is going to send them to hell. That kind of garbage. So, you have to be doing both at the same time. So, the dialectic applied to surface your pathologos and your false certainty is the functioning of that dialectic applied to what's most important is most important used to remove what's false, cause of our problems, suffering, and negative reincarnations. That's philosophical midwifery. But we've also said that to do both division, you need dream analysis. So one of our goals in this book is to figure out or create for ourselves the dialectic used to unpack the logos and ousia of dreams. And of course, the principle of those who know the same say the same about the same, because we have to share it. That's part of the game. After all, if wouldn't you, in whatever reality you find yourself, wouldn't you want to run into a philosopher saying, hey bud, do you know that all your problems are understandable? You should never feel guilt or blame or shame. What you should feel is curiosity and wonder. There's your question. Because you're specifically here to learn the art of dialectic, which allows you to solve problems, remove what's false, know the truth of self and reality, win the video game, and master and develop a relationship with your guide, your dream maker. You need someone to tell you that. So us who are learning that, we share it. So as a conclusion, or having gone through those three, we end up with an understanding that we can share and experiences that we can share. There's our Usia and Logos again. That's called mythology. Or just talking. Or making content. Making content that reflects your highest vision and your highest understanding. Your highest experience, vision, model, Usia, and your highest understanding, thinking, Logos. In other words, be authentic. So, a dialectic on dialectic incorporates those four elements of what we're here to do. Meaning, we can unify into one activity our purpose. That allows us to answer the question, what am I in this video game I've just awoken in? What's my goal? What ability do I have? And how will that affect what happens when I die? So all of these questions answered with the same one activity, the dialectic, which is Logos, the art of Logos. Now art, because it's a skill, so you have to actually practice it, but we have fun doing that, so that's fine. Hooray. But because it's a skill that you can use to benefit yourselves and others, it's called art. That's what art means with a capital A. Art requires a true universal model and an understandable set of parts, hierarchically understood. So here are our hierarchically arranged parts that you can master as a skill to benefit someone else. All arts. Doctor has to have a idea of the whole of a healthy human body, understand its parts, learn it as a skill, and use it to benefit the sick people. He's got a sore back and he's got a walking stick. Always to benefit the subject. Now notice the reason we live in an unjust world is while we allow this for doctors, they always have to benefit. Again, always have to have these parts, a pilot, a mechanic, everyone, except for two things, politicians and clergy. Religion and politics are the two professions we haven't yet woken up to our own rationality and said, yeah, you have to fucking learn the model of the healthy soul, understand its parts, how to harmonize it, and make spiritual principles called the dialectic, or laws for spiritual people, or make policies and laws that reflect that harmony and create the conditions for people to master the dialectic to become healthy souls. Not for your own money. So make sure that politicians and spiritual authority people get the minimum wage only, not the median, the minimum, because they're supposed to benefit everyone, meaning raising the quality of life for everyone. That's what we need to demand as a healthy society. And it's obvious, of course we do. Otherwise, we have what we have now. People with no model of excellence, just their personal beliefs from childhood, their pathologos, their problems down here, religions and religious people and politician people, no learning of the parts, so 1, 2 whole parts, no learning of the parts, no understanding. The politicians and religious authorities are the stupidest, generally speaking. No mastery of the skill to implement an understanding of the parts to facilitate the healthy whole, and there's no demand that they always have to benefit everyone. Religion is always about anger and division and murder. Murder as Abraham was instructed to murder. So the Christians are the chosen people and they have to kill the Muslims and the Jews. The Jews are the chosen people, they have to kill, etc., etc. Everyone fucking killing each other, and politics the same. The politicians serve the capitalists. A few dozen billionaires, and that's it. Everyone else can fucking die and starve and be tortured in prison. Or be sent to concentration camps. Or live a life in constant fear of homelessness, so they can be most easily manipulated, exploited, etc. So that's where we are as a species, and that is nothing other than individuals playing out or projecting their problems onto others. That's the idea of interpretation. So, one activity, and that's great that we have unified the 4 aspects. We've seen how it applies to us individually, and if we don't do it individually, we become bad citizens and do not demand it on the whole. We've seen how that the most ignorant or pathologos-ridden people seek positions of power in politics and religion so they can universalize, or as Dionysius said in the Bible, create images of God that reflects the absurdity and ignorance of their own personal problems, like God being jealous, or God wanting to kill, or God wanting to rape. All of the bullshit that you read in the Bible about God, it's just a personal pathologos projection. Peter's principle we've been talking about. So we've understood how it applies to the whole, it applies to us individually, and we've unified into one single activity, that which answers the basic questions that make us rational. What are we? What's our goal? What's our A and B button to reach that goal? And what happens after this lifetime as a result? Those 4 fundamental rational questions and the 4 fundamental activities, philosophy, midwifery, dream analysis, and mythology, or sharing, are aspects of the dialectic, or eidos, because you can't have one without the other. You have to be doing them all at the same time. That's the idea of eidos. That's a key logos term we need. The eidos of the dialectic. So we've unified into one activity, the art of the dialectic, the purpose of every human being who's alive, or every living being on any planet who has evolved different from cabbages and caterpillars and cows, because they have any species who have evolved ousia, self-reflection, and logos, language, understanding, and reason. And that happens to be us as human beings. So it's true for everyone wherever you go. So if you find yourself on a different planet or a different multiverse, if you get bitten by a radioactive spider and you can go traverse through multiverses and you find yourself on a different planet, you'll end up asking the same question. Hey, who's mastering the dialectic? Who's reading the Parmenides? Who's reading Pierre Grimes? Because it's the noblest game, or the only real game in town. It's the hero's journey.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
And
you're a wizard, Harry.
We're all wizards, Harrys. We're all here to do that. So that's neat, because if we have one single activity, that means we have a single activity or art we can focus on and carry questions about, and learn the language for. So there's our self with our attention, questions in an open state of mind, and learning our language. There's the 1, 2, 3 aspects: self, mind, and understanding that we're here to develop. Let's make some space. So there's our model of meditation. Or focus on, carry questions about, and learn the language for. To carry that at all times is, well, to carry that concentration that we can concentrate on. Concentration. But if we do this and do not drop it, that becomes meditation. Yesterday we reflected on where we were and where we are in the book. To do this at all times in whatever you do, whether you're fighting in the army as Socrates did, whether you're drinking everyone else under the table as Socrates did, or whether you're making love as Socrates did, this is the goal. Because this kind of speculation, or focusing on and having questions about and using language for, or to dialectically speculate about self and reality, is meditation. And if you're not doing it, you are going to be pouring your energy into fantasies, daydreams, or interpretations. What you think is the triad: real, good, and true. But you are projecting a false image of those things in your daydreams or fantasies. So to have a pure mind in whatever you're doing, focused on what you're doing, and using that activity to speculate or wonder in this kind of a way, is meditation. Now, as we read last time, as we talked about last time, if you maintain that meditation, so sustained concentration is meditation, sustained meditation, you can join with it. That's contemplation. We join with it. Contemplation. And that's important because, as we read in the text, we need both understanding and experience, and that's what makes the difference. So let's see it once more in the text. Let's look for understanding. Here we go. So the difference between fantasy, or projection of your own images and thoughts, by the way, we don't choose our fantasies or projection. Many believe their fantasy life is their own creation, but they fail to recognize the self-image within the fantasy is actually a manifestation of a false identification of self. So we're not to feel bad about projections or fantasizing. We just say, hey, let's pause, champ, whatever it is we're doing, our drinking, our lovemaking, our whatever, reading. Pause, champ, for a moment, because I just noticed I went off on a tangent and started fantasizing. We could either pause, champ, and reflect on that drama and trace it back to the original image of yourself that began the drama, its cause. Take some notes. We could either put those notes aside for later and get back to what we're doing, or we could just pause, champ, even longer and do a little bit of philosophical midwifery. If that's enough of a clue to make a new connection about how this particular problem has had a history through your life and trace it back ideally to its earliest scene or inception, and put the logos and questions, put the logos and ousia on that early scene that we were blocked from asking questions about and putting words on when we first developed that false belief about ourselves to become a member of our family tribe. So it's not a blame or shame game. It's not to feel bad about. It's clues. Nuggets of gold. Gems to be polished and discovered. So, and the difference between that fantasization, is that the word? Yeah, sure, why not? Fantasizing or daydreams, and what we do is the difference between fantasy and philosophical speculation. There is, in fantasy, there is a false image of the self, and its drama has no correspondence to the way of truth of the meditation of the philosopher. So philosophical speculation is another word for this. So we can say, well, we got some spam in the chat.
Robots will replace that, and that's that's terrifying.
Damn robots.
You piece of shit, there's a robot.
Robots.
Vapid cunt.
Jesus, robots.
I don't know if you know this, but like weird dudes exist everywhere.
You're a weird dude, robot in chat.
Robots will replace that, and that's
You don't talk to me, you robot. Shut up.
Robot, shut up, robot. So to focus on, to carry questions about and learn the language for what we're focusing on, self and reality, that's what we've called philosophical speculation. So that's what we're doing. Notice we're getting the term or the language from the text. That's how you read. Speculation. Otherwise, you'd just be projecting your own false beliefs onto it, which is not what you want to do. Philosophical speculation, and it's also the use of the dialectic. Formally, the dialectic is the questions and the language directed to what you're focused on. Making use of the three fundamental aspects of the self. The self, your attention, your mind, state of mind with a question, and your understanding. Notice those are the first, second, and third hypotheses of Parmenides. The self, the one self, the brilliant light of being or mind, understanding, and fourth is belief, where we have our problems, and fifth is strict dualism, materialism, or saying there is no connection with the whole. Strictly disconnected, strict dualist, where there's a body and mind and never the two shall meet. Or maybe there's not even mind. So, focus on questions about self and reality in whatever you're doing, to carry that question, to learn and use the language for it. Learn and use as well. To learn and use the specific language or logos for it. That's philosophical speculation, or the dialectic. And as we saw in the text, meditation. Why? Because meditation results in contemplation when you reach the end or the success. Let's see it in the text. So, in fantasy, there is a false image of self, and the drama that plays out in your fantasy won't reach truth. That's the drama. That's why all fantasies are failures. In other words, the activity around that model, or the activity, so you could also see logos and ousia as the activity and the model. So the activity based on the model of your beliefs just play out in a human drama that you lose. You don't get there because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're starting with the wrong image, so you're not going to go anywhere. Whereas what we do is have a question about self and reality, and we use the method that does actually get us there. Different idea of self and different method. Different ousia or model and different logos. That's it. It's just those two things over and over. A button and B button. Human beings have like imagine an Xbox controller. They've got an X and a Y button that they shouldn't be pressing. And instead of pressing A and B, they're pressing X and Y. False belief about self and reality. Crappy activity. That's the drama. The drama plays out the implications and the crappy activity that follows from that state of being of false identification. That's human drama, that's human problems, and that's human fantasies. Which also means because we can understand it, we can trace it back to its origin. Let's not get wrapped up in the drama. Let's use analogy, as we looked at last time, to drop the specifics of the drama, whatever you're fantasizing about, and look at the relationships that play out so you can trace it back and solve the problem. Let's ban the
You
spammer.
piece of shit, there's a robot.
Damn
Are you
robot.
just blow in from Stupid Town?
Robot blowing in from stupid town. God damn it. Right. So. Back to the book. So, in fantasy, there's a false image of the self, and its drama has no correspondence to the actual way to truth of the meditation of the philosopher. So, philosophical speculation in what you're doing at all times. You could always be wondering. We're wondering all the time. You could always be using the right language to apply to your wondering. Because, yeah, you got to think about what you're wondering about. And what's thinking other than the use of key words, terms, definitions, and how you structure them. Are you making loose connections with no rationality, or are you thinking, reasoning in a path of causal connection? That's the dialectic. So, the speculations of philosophy, or dialectic, or meditation, lead to understanding and experience. Yay.
No, you're not the one that's mentally unwell. You're brave. You are crossing into
Boundaries.
We're crossing into new boundaries. Right?
But I thought this was actually kind of interesting.
I thought so. My protein drink is getting a bit warm. Yuck. So, the speculations lead to understanding and experience. That's the difference. Experience or contemplation. And because our method makes use of questions and language, we are also gaining understanding. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
That's what makes it the complete tradition. Modern academia might get understanding if they're lucky, so long as they are reading the books that we read. Yogas might have experience if they're lucky, often based on how many mushrooms you've eaten. But the dialectic or philosophical speculation is the ultimate form or the paradigm or model because it gives you both. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win.
Wow.
Wow.
So, contemplating on the true nature of the good, the real, and the true, self and reality. That's what we focus on. That's what we carry questions about. And that's what we learn and use language for. That's the dialectic or philosophical speculation. It's also meditation because it leads to understanding and experience. There's our A and B button once again. Understanding and experience, or ousia and logos, or parts and whole, or understanding of the parts and direct experience of the whole. Logos and ousia. There's our A and B buttons. That makes us evolved. Different from cabbages and caterpillars. So, we need to therefore have a way of dropping the certainty So let's compare this to our problems. Certainty, Dunning-Kruger effect. So no questions, because you already think you know about what the world is. Sad face for problems. Little tear. Move it up a little bit. Terrible picture. There we go, and then a tear, and then a face. Certainty and our sick language of belief that is going to have a particular to clan, whether it's religious language. I'm a sinner, I'm a heathen, I suck because I'm a woman, and Abraham or Allah doesn't like women or some bullshit. It's particular to family, clan, or family language. You're a shit, or you're a suck head. I don't know. Whatever your family uses to put yourself down. Or pathologos. So instead of learning the actual logos, it's the pathologos. Instead of questions, it's certainty. So we don't want to be doing that. And that's our fantasies. That's our tangents. Our tangents that distract us. Daydreams. And fantasies. Fantasies. That looks right. Fantasies. So that's how humans add energy to their problems and sustain their problems through tangents, daydreams, and fantasies that reflect an image of the self. Oh, so instead of focusing on the self, we have a underlying false image of the self. Underlying and false image. Space. Let's move everything down. Underlying false image and Image. Okay. Image and identification. You think it's you. That's how you get wrapped up and focused. You think it's really you. It's real. Identification of self. These are our problems. Problems. M. Making us sad. Beans. So, what sustains human problems? An underlying false image and identification with self that manifests in a state of mind of certainty, no questions. That has a corresponding particular language, which reflects the sick language of beliefs, or sick logos or pathologos, which will be particular. There will be some idiosyncrasies to your family clan, religious society, and family. And that manifests or keeps your problem alive by tangentializing you from your goals, or daydreams, or fantasies, making use of the immediacy of the beauty or the intimacy or whatever it is that gives you energy, making use of that to pour it into your problems. Now, it's not a blame game. You can pause champ and take some notes and go back to the activity, or you can pause champ and take some notes about the state of mind and the language and the drama, and do philosophical midwifery, which is this thing. Use the dialectic to trace its history back through your past to the origin scene, and reevaluate that origin scene with logos in Usia that you weren't using when you were just a little baby. Or you can just take notes and do that later. Remember, we're doing all four of these things. So if you're doing philosophy time, or if you're doing partying and drinking time, or if you're doing fighting in a battle time, or if you're doing lovemaking time, maybe you don't want to pause. Pierre once told me this. He goes, you know what? I'll tell you how to be a champion athlete. Whenever you find yourself out of that pure state of mind, focused on what you are doing, in the activity you're doing, that's what takes you out of excellence. And I said to him, hang on a second, are you saying that whenever I notice let's say I'm playing soccer, and I notice myself in a fantasy or daydream or distraction, I call a timeout, I call the water boy in to take notes about the state of mind, kind of state of mind, the kind of language, the drama, and any image of the self. And I promise to address that after the game in philosophical midwifery, ideally with a friend who's also awake to the game. And then in making that promise, mind will work with me and allow me to get back to the activity I'm focused on, provided I've made that promise, allowing me to have the excellence of that activity. And Pierre Grimes listened, and he paused. He paused, champed, and he said, yes, but make sure he has a pencil too. I fucked up that joke. I said, hey, I should get the water boy to run out with a pad to write these things down. And he goes, yes, but make sure he's got a pencil. He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. He's an odd guy. In a good way. So, that's how our problems manifest. And what we are doing is, again, not blaming ourselves, but pause, champing to take notes, promising to get back to it later, or doing the midwifery in that time, if you can, if it's appropriate. And then, or getting back to what you're doing, and what you're doing to focus on and carry questions about and learn and use the language for philosophical speculation or the dialectic to self and reality. That's formally meditation. So it ticks all the boxes of meditation. Other meditations you've had will have a piece of that. Maybe they'll have focus, but they're focused on a candle, not self and reality. Maybe they'll have questions, but they're not your questions, they're a koan given by a guru. Maybe they have a certain language, but it's a language of belief or devotion or some other shit. So this uses all of the aspects in the proper way, making it the one meditation, the one spiritual tradition, or the paradigm for spirituality, or meditation. But it's also meditation because it ends in the experience and understanding. That's why you need all parts. And we've been looking at the disasters that follow if you only have the experience but not the understanding. The story of Jesus. Had a luminosity experience, didn't have the language of logos, applied his Sikh language of belief to it, became wrapped up in his family and religious problem, causing his tragic end. Or, as Jesus said in the book, all hell braked loose. We have fun. So, we need a language to remove or separate from our pathologos Sikh language of ignorance and certainty. So religion, oh, here's what God is. Are you sure? Yep, sure. So sure, I'm willing to kill anyone who disagrees with me. Fucking assholes.
The hell's
No, not
wrong with you
assholes.
people? You sick freaks.
They're sick freaks. Assholes serve an important function. They don't.
Kant's a little fucking bitch.
Kant's a little...
Calm your fucking tits.
needs to calm his tits.
Dude, suck my dick.
Okay, no. Enough of that. Enough.
1 million viewers and probably 4 trillion viewers.
I'm glad I'm getting a lot of viewers, soundboard. So, we need to, if we grow up in a cultish or particularly, I mean, everyone grows up in their own family belief, but we need a language that can separate us from that certainty and that pathologos language, but also we need a certain language that allows us to learn this logos and awaken these questions about reality or the stream of wisdom or the rays of the sun, 2 analogies we're playing with, and the language that allows us to wonder about the self or the sun itself or that which is unchanging or the thing beyond or transcending existence and experience. Which brings us to where we are in the text. There was a dude called Dionysius who saw the incoming dark ages, the murdering of everything good by Christian Emperor Justinian, who followed the bullshit of Paul to reject what Jesus taught about understanding and reflection, even if it was just at this level, and said, no, you need faith. Otherwise you go to hell. Otherwise we will torture you. Otherwise we will burn you alive. All that fucking terrible horseshit.
You have the brain of a child if you think that.
And they have a brain of a child.
Dumbass?
They're dumb. We say dumbass to them. Dumbass. So Dionysius saw this on the horizon and he reinterpreted the language to show 2 things. To show that depictions of God by people is a reflection of the idiocy and the absurdity of their own problems and beliefs. So don't take it literally. Look at whoever is telling the story. A racist person will say, I'm not racist. God says this. A rapist will say, I'm not a rapist. The Bible, and there's quotes in the Bible. You can quote God saying it's okay to rape X, Y, and Z. I'm not a capitalist scumbag causing the end of civilization for my own ignorance and greed. God says you can, says American preachers. Okay, so projecting your beliefs, Dionysius said that, but he also changed the language interpreted, remember, adding what's not there, leaving what is, interpreted the language of the believers to give people who were stuck in that family and upbringing the language they need to escape their problems and develop understanding and experience of reality and self. Hooray for Dionysius. So that's a new class of interpreters. So one of the goals of the text is to not just learn the truth, remember, we also have that fourth aspect of the dialectic. We need to share it. Part of our mastery of the dialectic is sharing it. But that requires us to understand all of the different ways human beings can interpret truth. Some people will reject what we say completely, try to shoot us or whatever. Some people will pretend to speak for us, but really they're a wolf in sheep's clothing. Some people will take a little bit of what we say and just patch it onto their stupid beliefs. So we want to make a list so we can recognize our own negative interpretations to truth and those of others that we care about, so that we don't end up banging our head against the wall, sharing, hey, there's a meaning of life, and it's one thing, and it's the logos, and we don't have to kill each other anymore. The model of politics is the logos. It's easy. Get into it. Have fun. And then people say, oh, that's stupid. You're stupid. I'm cool when I say that you're stupid. Fucking idiots. To them we say,
Vapid cunt.
vapid cunt. But we're not going to be banging our head against the world, banging our head against the world, banging our head against a wall, because we want to understand, oh, that's just this level of interpretation. Because human beings aren't robots. It's not a matter of telling the truth. It's also, we have to be artful in how we present the truth and meet people where they're at, so that we can recognize when they respond negatively. Don't get mad at them and slap them in the head and say, hey, you idiot. Say to them,
Vapid cunt.
my goodness. We say, oh, okay, that's this kind of interpretation. We might even be able to connect it to the dialectic and say, oh, yes, that's stage B negative interpretation. Here's what you need to do if you're interested in learning to get to stage A interpretation or stage C interpretation. So that's what we need to do. We need to understand all of the ways human beings respond to truth, so that we can, for ourselves, because we're human beings too, like learning to be our best, and for others that we care about, so we can share the truth. And also not take it personally when they are blocked, but understand the nature of their block within this hierarchical set of interpretation, and we can respond positively and benefit them. So, classes or kinds of interpretation or response to new truth. This is one of the key goals of the book. One of the goals was to unify all of the activities so we can always do it or meditate. As we got here with this dialectic on dialectic. One of the puzzles of the text is to specifically, board has to catch it. Blackboard. There it is. Specifically nail down the dialectic for dream analysis, because we don't have that yet. It died with Socrates. So while Damascus and Dionysius, who we're talking about in the Bible, stressed the significance of dreams, as Socrates did, they weren't able to nail down the dialectic. So that's one of our goals. Another one of our goals is to understand all of the human responses or interpretations to new truth, so we can share or follow the law of truth. Those who know the same say the same about the same. And master the art, because that's our one activity, master the art. So far, we have a list. We've got people who reject the new and keep the old. We have people who claim to speak for the new while remaining loyal to the old, or a wolf in sheep's clothing. And Paul is an example of this. The people who modern Christians quote because to scam people, you have to appeal to belief, because belief is wrong, belief is stupid, belief is brainless. So if you use understanding to demonstrate how this product is great for you, then if it's understanding, then they don't have to believe you, they can understand it. And if it's understanding, it's actually good. But if you're a grifter or a con artist, like a capitalist or a Republican or a conservative or politician and clergy, you have to trick people to think something bad is good, and you can only do that through belief. That's why they always target religious people. And that's why they're trying to remove education, so we don't learn how to think, so they can appeal to your beliefs. Racist beliefs, religious beliefs, political beliefs, bullshit beliefs. And that's why they quote Paul. So modern Christians are Pauline Jews, by definition, because that's who they quote, because they want to save the idea of faith or belief, which is, again, human ignorance and the cause of problems. So, to claim to speak for the new while remaining loyal to the old, wolf in sheep's clothing, to take a piece of the new as a patch on the coat of the old. And that's the patchwork coat model and the Kabbalah is an example because it takes Parmenides, a piece of Parmenides, into the Sephardic religious tradition. That's what the Kabbalah is. What else did we have? Let's look at my notes from the other board. Rejecter of the rejectors, supporter of the rejectors, and only taking a piece, like Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus. Gotta wait for my board to update. While it updates, I will have a quick pause to take a bio break. Be right. Now I'm back from my break. Let's jump in. Oh, my soundboard is still loading. That's crazy. This is why I changed my soundboard. My blackboard is still loading. This is why I changed blackboards, because this one was so big. It has 32,029 strokes and 612,000 points on this blackboard. So I don't have to be recording. All right, we're back. So, rejectors of the rejector. So there's a kind of interpretation which is kind of second order. So maybe we would have 1, 2, 3, 4 responses, and 5, 6, 7, 8 that are in responses to them, because that's the dialectic. The hypotheses of Parmenides takes the cognitive functions we've developed from our map. So if we ignore the ultimate, the first hypothesis, or the one self, we've got, so that's number one. But if we take knowing as the second hypothesis of Parmenides, he breaks down a dialectic of what isn't specifically involved in that state of knowing. Understanding is number 3, belief is number 4, strict dualism is number 5. Then you can also have people whose whole worldview is a rejection of that. Nihilists reject that there's even a material world. So these materialists in 5, nihilism is a rejection of that. And so on for 8. I won't get into it now. 8, 7, and 6 is a rejection of those other ones. But the interesting thing is, if you understand, this is why we talked about Peter's principle, you're limited by your level of understanding. If you don't think your position is understandable, as Jesus thought he couldn't understand his divine luminosity, meaning he was blocked from development, if you understand your position, you can become free of it. So by understanding nihilism, what's involved in it, it implies the existence of materialism. So you're free from, by understanding it, in other words, the premises that are required to be a nihilist imply the thing it rejects. So if nihilists understand their position properly, they will say, hang on a second, I'm taking for granted the material world that I'm rejecting. Anyway, so we can wonder about that, because here we have the 4th response to truth from the book, rejecting. So it's not 9 rejecting 5, as we just said, in terms of hypotheses of Parmenides or particular worldviews. Rejecting, or rejector of the rejector. So Paul, who rejects Jesus to found modern Christianity, is rejected by Mark. Mark says, hey, if you want to get into belief, this is the tragedy that follows in the life of Jesus. So you better do understanding. So prior to his divine luminosity experience, take a look at the parables and see if they reflect understanding or belief. And after, without the language to understand his own particular position and vision, what were his parables like? And how did it end? So that's Paul, a rejecter of the rejecter. We also have the Gospel of John. a supporter of the rejecter. And I didn't spell rejecter properly up there. Rejector. So supporter of the rejecter, John. I'm gonna put my chips in with this Paul character and how he rejects Jesus. I'm gonna get on board with that. Says the Gospel of John. We have number 6. Those who let's see if we can find the language from the book. I want to say those who accept the new but leave out significant elements of the new. Let's see if we can find there. Let me just make this a bit bigger now. Okay, significant isn't the right word. Leave out. Not found. Okay. Fail to include. Hey, found it. Hooray. So the 6th one we have so far before our new member Dionysius. Let's read this. Socrates, thank you for the invitation. What was the invitation? Okay, so the followers or the people that followed Socrates, how well did they do in understanding the complete logos that we have from Socrates, which would be all 4 aspects of the dialectic, or eidos of the dialectic? How well did they do, considering Socrates was in the process of doing the mythology when we murdered him for not agreeing with the state religion? Once again, religion fucking everything up for everyone. How well did they do is the question. Thank you for the Oh, Socrates is saying this, so let's hear it in his voice. Thank you for the invitation, Jesus. Among our philosophers, Iamblichus, Plotinus, and Proclus have brought our philosophy along more contemplative and metaphysical and reflective lines. Among them, Plotinus offers a banquet of philosophical ideas that raise the level of reflection to the psychic states of mind, as well as bringing additional clarity to metaphysical ideas. So Plotinus talks about his own personal experience, reflects on what it feels like to go through all these stages. He views soul, love, beauty, and contemplation through his contemplative philosophical experiences. There we get a beautiful confirmation of our idea of contemplation. So carrying this philosophical speculation and practice of the dialectic in everything we do is a sustained concentration, which can transition into contemplation or experience. And Plotinus talks a lot about his experiences or contemplation. Blah, 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 where are we? He views the soul and love and beauty and contemplation, there we go, through his contemplative philosophical experiences. It is through his experiences that he is able to present mind, understanding the mind. His philosophy is the cultivation of the mystic experience of divine luminosity. But without a corresponding dialectic, it lacks the scope and precision of Plato's dialectic, as well as that of Proclus. So he wants to cultivate that experience, but of course, you need the logos and dialectic. But Plato and Proclus, two dudes who have the dialectic. In a similar way, these philosophers, Plato and Proclus, did not explore the dream world. We could say they advanced the metaphysics in a remarkable way and brought about more of the personal element of their experience into our philosophy. However, as a group, they did not include the study of dreams or midwifery for the soul. So, we have Mr. Plotinus, who talked a lot about his experiences, but lacked the dialectic of philosophy. We have, so, lacking in the dialectic of philosophy. We have Proclus and Plato, who had this, tick, but did not have dream analysis and did not have midwifery. So, what? And so those are the people who followed Socrates. So we are by having all four, we're ticking all the boxes. So we're doing very well. Hooray for us. Jesus comes in. Well, let's call them a new member of the class of interpreters, for clearly they advance certain parts of philosophy and ignore other important parts. Now, just because people might be curious about getting into these dudes, let's read the next line. What you say is true, because what Proclus advanced was a beautiful exploration of our metaphysics. He also authored a divine vision of the elements of theology. He opened up several of Plato's dialogues and certainly advanced the dialectic, as you said. However, he did another great service. He showed the rational structure of his metaphysics matched and had exact correspondence with our Hellenic account of the gods. So, you might enjoy Proclus, especially the Balboa translations, because the elements of the theology is a huge, thorough breakdown of all of the kind of principles and forces and rules of the study of the metaphysics or mind. There's like hundreds of those little elements, and he very prolific in his writing. He also did commentary on Plato's works. Now, the commentary on Plato's Parmenides, so in Plato's Parmenides, Parmenides is Socrates' teacher, and he said, you won't reach truth unless you master the dialectic, which is a conclusion we've come to ourselves today. But he doesn't outline the dialectic. He gives like a puzzle to solve. Proclus breaks it down. So this model here that we have come to from ourselves from our reading of that, and you can check that out on YouTube. We read the opening of Parmenides on the channel. Proclus comes to a very similar conclusion. Now, we use the word conclusion that includes synthesis and analysis. But yeah, it's pretty much the same. So these 8 categories. And he gives you an example dialectic on providence. So one of the things we'll do on this channel, perhaps after we finish this text, is take a squiz at an example of this dialectic that we are here to master, literally the single activity we can focus and meditate on in everything we do. He does it. He gives you one. One of the greatest things you can wonder about, providence, the divine intelligent care of Ousia and Logos that's being communicated to us at all times. Does providence exist, or are we in a cruel or uncaring universe? It's a big one. It's an important one. So we might read that later. So that's Proclus. You might enjoy his stuff if you like to read. So that gives us our 6th category of interpreters. Advance certain parts and ignore other important parts. So let's put it on the board. Advance certain parts and ignore other important parts. So let's keep it word for word. Ignore I'm getting hungry. This is one of the reasons why it's best to do philosophy out of body, because you don't have to worry about getting hungry. And ignore other important parts. For example, Plotinus, Plato, and Proclus. And I'm going to sneeze. Bless me.
They're secretly bless you. Excuse you. Bless you.
Proclus. How do you spell Proclus? Proclus. Proclus. So here is our sixth category of interpreters. Advance certain parts and ignore other parts. Next is Dionysius. Who? Let's read. So that was on page 161. So let's read. This is where we are. And I will drink some juice. Jesus. So, Dionysius turned Christians into Platonic philosophers without their knowing it. Wow!
Wow.
What does that make him? He uses Platonic thought to convert believers into philosophers. No, that's not clear enough. He interprets Christian images and metaphors philosophically, and in doing so, brings to followers a higher state of mind. Ooh. Then the core beliefs are interpreted philosophically, while giving the appearance of loyalty to those core beliefs. It does appear we have identified a new member of the class of interpreters. Yes, we may have a new member. His works were finally judged pagan and rejected after his analysis of his works showed they were written in the 6th century and not in the 1st. What's the significance of the 6th century? Because in 529 AD, Emperor Justinian, Christian Emperor Fuckface McGee, to him we say,
Cunt's a little fucking bitch.
and so is he, shut down the academy, burnt the libraries, executed or exiled the philosophers, and instituted belief-based ignorance that he can use to manipulate and exploit human beings, and you weren't allowed to think for yourself. Even the Bible you couldn't read for yourself. You just had to do as you're fucking told. And that brought in the Dark Ages. A really, really bad part of history that we're in the process of reliving with Trumpism. So, the significance of the 6th century and not the 1st, where he claimed to be around when Jesus died and stuff. So, don't be dumb, don't reject Dionysius, especially if you're Christian. Get into that. It's in the Bible, find it, get into it. You can awaken from your slumber of ignorance. Hooray, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
We can conclude one thing, and that is when it is possible to reject an interpretation that challenges the literal meaning of core beliefs, then the loyalists to that literalness will reassert themselves and reject philosophical interpretation. Loyalists, the barbaric, stupidest fuckers in our species. Now, that's how they function. Terrible. But even they can turn it around if they awaken to their task. And if we create a society that creates the conditions for people to make use of ousia and logos, self-reflection, dialectic, and not just thinks life is just a way of a place where you can learn to exploit and hurt people for your own personal profit. So we can help everyone, potentially. So the literalists, the loyalists to literalness will reassert themselves and reject the philosophical interpretation. How far before the chorus comes in? We've got a little bit. Another thing, since his works were rejected, should they not also reject those who he influenced? Certainly, we know that Thomas Aquinas cites him well over 1,000 times in his works. So, Thomas Aquinas is the famous philosopher of Christianity. The legitimacy of Christianity as a thing is usually pinned on Thomas Aquinas. He showed that, religion is fine because for every stage in philosophical development, there is a corresponding stage that you get through magic or divine revelation, because Dionysius has it. See the rub? The entire legitimacy of Christianity as a tradition rests on Dionysius, who was a philosopher. So, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? For our species, if you're not an immature baby,
You're a baby. You're a little baby.
If you're not a little baby, you can think, well, that is interesting. Little baby and pick teams. Well, I don't like that. I'm team blue team. I'm team Anglican or some fucking shit. No, as a species. Isn't that interesting? That we went through a period where someone realizes he can be ruler over everyone through his own ignorance and exploit people, causing the fucking Dark Ages. And the only legitimacy in this belief-based tradition is the thing that says, don't do belief. Belief is ignorance. Belief is harm. Learn to think. Learn to understand. So, ultimate grifters caused the Dark Ages, and they always appeal to belief. Shapes and colors, the American flag, the Christian cross, white supremacy, bullshit like that. And the only legitimacy comes from the guy who had to sneak his way in and say, yeah, you know what you need to do? Give up belief and develop understanding. Make use of your language. Don't use a sick language of belief. Use proper language. Use your thinking to understand language and use it to reflect on the truth, giving up your certainty of your loyalty to the ignorant fuckheads who taught you your belief. To them we say,
Fuck you. Actually, fuck you.
fuck you. So I think that's interesting. As a species, we went through that period. So hopefully we can learn from our mistakes and not have to go through another dark age by rejecting understanding in favor of beliefs that the worst, most ignorant, sadistic people want to use to manipulate as part of their fucking grift. That's our current trajectory. We need to wake up to our purpose and instead use our mind to explore ideas and find our way to truth and justice. Which happens through the dialectic, of course. Thomas Aquinas cites him well over 1,000 times in his works. Then too, based on this principle, there should be other very distinguished thinkers who should be rejected. What do you say to that? So, all of the philosophers apologizing, or apologists, I think the word is, apologizing for Christianity, quotes Thomas Aquinas, who quotes Dionysius over 1,000 times. 1,000's a lot. So that whole lineage, there you go. If you don't know, now you know.
I love this guy. And she spit on him also.
And she also spit on them.
Would you just blow in from Stupid Town?
I've been a bad little girl.
Oh my goodness. Conflict in the soundboard today. This button. Your skill for... Oh, yeah, so controversial. Oh, what a controversial take. But it's not me saying it. It's the book. And it's true. Tell your friends.
But I thought this was actually kind of interesting.
And it is interesting. Thank you.
No, you're not the one that's mentally unwell. You're brave. You are crossing into new boundaries.
I love that drop. That's my favorite drop. Your skill for controversy few can match, Socrates, says Jesus. You are saying that just as there is a need for understanding and practicing some spiritual practice or meditation, understanding and practicing, it's the two, it's the A and B button. Understanding and practicing, learning and nurture, understanding and experience, logos and ousia. Some spiritual practice or meditation, so the religious must be open to bringing their system into such practices. Now, you don't have to give up your whole, picnic in church and stuff. Just focus on the best people in your tradition, Dionysius, Mark, maybe even the Gnostic Gospels that were buried but rediscovered in the 60s. And focus on that. In other words, bring your mind to perfecting and purifying your own tradition. So the religious must be open to bringing into their system such practices. Sounds simple. It is simple. For the rational, for the awake. Except that you are really saying that to the degree the spiritual element in man surfaces, so he should be open to whatever instruction and practice that can meet his need. To the degree the spiritual element of man surfaces, so should he be open to whatever. In other words, don't pick fucking teams like a mush brain, baby food brain, baby head. Don't be...
If you're experiencing a mental health episode, we don't want to have to see that.
We don't want to have to see a mental health episode. In other words, whatever is true and works, do that. No, but I was raised Mormon. Who gives a shit? Yeah, and the guy next door was raised Anglican. So what? Don't be a baby brain. Be open to whatever spiritual instruction and practice that meets our needs. Obviously, the need is there. So if any religion lacks understanding, highlight that because our method is understanding. That's what we do as human beings. That's what dialectic is. It's the art of understanding. The logos is understanding. That's our ticket. You understand how to fly a plane, you can be a pilot. You can't believe yourself into the job. So too, understanding self, reality, our purpose, and the A and B button that we can press to reach our goal is through understanding. So if our religion lacks such understanding of the practices necessary for the soul's quest with union with the divine, they should be open to absorbing from spiritual systems what they themselves lack. As Socrates is saying, so maybe he has a greater insight into the condition of man to say, hey, you know what? People aren't going to give up their ignorance. They're going to be loyal to their fucking bullshit. So instead of just dropping the ignorance and picking up the new, why not absorb from spiritual traditions what you lack to improve it? People who spent their life chanting Hare Krishna, they're not going to give up being a Hare Krishna, most likely. It's their whole life identity now. Just add to it the good stuff. Same thing for Taoists. Their whole identity is based on being a Taoist, etc., etc. Or a Muslim, or a Jew, or a Christian, or whatever. So he's saying, just absorb what you need to make your system include the understanding of the practices that are necessary for the soul's quest for union with the divine. He established the need for a hierarchy of ideas, Dionysius did. And in doing so, he found a place for the central ideas of philosophy, didn't he? Dionysius disguised himself as if he were a founder of Christian metaphysics, and developed further the notion of the hierarchical order in his philosophy, so that he advanced our philosophy. So, just as human problems are caused by belief or the imitation or cosplaying of knowing, so too do believers imitate the hierarchical nature of reality that we can understand and make use of. Whole, part, same, different, like, unlike. There's a hierarchy in there. So believers will say, here's your hierarchy. It's white men who are rich at the top, and then poor white men, but we're going to take all your shit, says the fascists and the conservatives and the right-wingers. But that's okay. We will create this fake hierarchy where you can abuse women, take away women's reproductive rights, that kind of shit. And also we're going to put the brown and black people under you. What's the quote? Tell the poorest white men they're above the best black men, and they will be blind to you picking their pockets. Thomas Jefferson quote. In fact, tell the white man they're better than the black man and they will empty their pockets for you. That's the grift. A false hierarchy, imitating the true hierarchy of the dialectic and the logos. However, he belongs to the class of those who prefer to present their ideas in a distinguished form, and in doing that, he offers an alternative to the understanding of the core beliefs of the old system. He uses the new, while appearing loyal to those core beliefs, all while creating an alternative to the literal reading of the core beliefs. So that's our new class. Appearing loyal to the core beliefs of the old, while actually creating an alternative to the literal meaning of the core beliefs. To offer an alternative. Based on the new. Jesus. He is a new member to our Order of Interpreters. Thanks for that. However, I would like you to unpack that notion you just dropped into our talk. What's this idea of order and hierarchy? And that's where we'll leave it. So we have our new member of the list of interpreters, one who appears loyal to the old while presenting the new, but in a way that can incorporate it within the, as an alternative to the literal bullshit of the old, to help people stuck in that family, stuck in that culture, stuck in that tradition. A lifeline for humanity. And also there's the principle that whatever system you're in, if it lacks the understanding of the dialectic that's necessary for our understanding and union with the divine, then add the fucking dialectic in. Add the logos. Whatever you do. You're a musician, add the dialectic and logos and see the logos of music in the circle of fifths. See the dialectic in your songwriting. Anything you do. That's called growth, that's called development. Next time, it seems we were going to get into the idea of what actual hierarchy and order is. We had a brief teaser talking about how it's misused by fascists and sexists and racists who present a fake hierarchy where you just win because of you're the biggest voting class and I need to manipulate you to vote for me so I can extract wealth from you and exploit you. Sadism. Human injustices against our own fucking species. No other animal does that, by the way. That's the terrible nature of ignorance. False belief. About self and reality, which also, because reality includes the good and justice, goodness and justice, it's false models of goodness and justice, etc. So, understanding human problems is very, very easy. It's just these two down here. Fake ousia based on belief and fake logos called the pathologos, imitating reality and self, and our purpose is to purify what's false, perfect the two, meeting two levels of logos and ousia for reality and self, unpack the dialectic of dreams so you can get guidance and help from every single dream you get, and find a way of sharing it. There are our 1, 2, 3, 4 aspects of the dialectic on the dialectic, the thing that we can, one activity we can therefore concentrate on, so we can be constantly meditating and be open to the gift of divine luminosity and the gift of knowing the self in the instant between each gap at all times, because we can be doing this at all times. If you're not, you're still doing it. You're just doing it with a false image of yourself, with a certainty that you know what self and reality is, using your own particular sick language of belief. That's fantasies, daydreams, tangents. That's what keeps our problem alive. So you might as well do this anyway, seeing as you're doing it anyway. You might as well do the... If you're pressing X and Y anyway, you might as well press A and B and win the game. And it's this part that we're focusing on, sharing it. Because we've added one more term, number 7, within the responses or interpreters to truth. The one pretending to be loyal to the old will actually presenting what's needed for the new in Dionysius. So, and what's needed for the new is hierarchical order. We've been saying our method is the logos. We need the logos. So we need to smuggle in a logos into people's beliefs, so they can get rid of the pathologos of belief. But we also have to learn the logos or language for mind and reality. And that involves understanding the terms and their structure or order. That's the language. You don't just throw words. You don't just say ousia, logos, eidos, self, mind, one. You got to structure those words in the right order. That's the dialectic. So we could say this dialectic is the archetype of hierarchical ordering of language. So we're going to keep that question in mind. How does the dialectical hierarchy of order, definition, then demonstration, then division, then conclusion, self, the two high terms, self then others, still got the high term in front, then others to others, and then other back to self. There's a hierarchical arrangement of self and other. How does that reflect the true order and hierarchy that we can read next time, and also keeping in the back of the minds any purification of any negative hierarchy that we do? Women are less than men. Bullshit. Socrates' teacher was Diotima. Right?
I'm always good. And that is what I stand for, being good all the time.
Being good all the time. So, fake hierarchies, of course, to manipulate people through belief. We want to explore the true hierarchy or model or paradigm of reality, keeping a question, how does that relate to the dialectic? That's what we're going to read next time. Exciting. What a teaser. Oh my God. Exciting, right? We have covered a lot today, and yeah, a new class in our interpreters that we can be on alert for. But seems to be the best in terms of interpretation so far. Although, actually, probably on par with number 6, because number 6 was advancing certain parts and ignoring the others, like Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus. So it's not quite just, yeah, just do the new and get rid of the old. So but it's still up there, smuggling in the new within a tradition to make it open, meeting people where they're at, kind of. It's pretty good. Round of applause for Dionysius. So next time, orders and hierarchies, so we can polish up the language that we need for our constant meditation. Constant philosophical speculation, constant dialectic, the meaning of life. Hammering A and B at the same time, which is a special move, because if A is open curiosity and questions, the opposite of certainty, and B is the use of language and logos, the opposite of pathologos, then the dialectic is pressing both buttons. And what happens when you press A and B together? You get your ultimate attack. You get your alt. So why not just hammer the alt? Why not just do dialectic at all times? Literally, why not? It's either that or fantasy. You're either feeding that, or you're learning and nurturing in a way that brings the excellence and justice to your soul, or you're entertaining fantasies because you can't not think. There's always thinking happening. Matter of taking charge. So why not hammer A and B at all times, as opposed to X and Y, which is fueling your problems? If you want to join the Discord, there's a link below. If you want a PDF of the text, you can buy the book, of course. There's a link to the PDF below. And if you do want to support the channel, that is a great help for me at the moment. And there is a link below for that too. I appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one.